Have you ever felt stuck? You know the feeling. Like you're on a treadmill, running hard but just not getting anywhere? Well, today we are going to deconstruct one of the biggest, most invisible traps in our lives, the comfort zone. We're going to explore why it's so darn powerful and what it really costs us to stay inside it. This quote from innovator Phil McKinney just nails the problem, doesn't it? In our jobs, in our lives, we can get completely locked into these routines, answering the same emails, going to the same meetings, and we become just like these ants, marching in a circle, mistaking all that motion for actual progress.
And it's such a frustrating question. I mean, we dream about starting that business, or finally asking for that raise, or learning a new skill, but we just stick with the job that doesn't fulfill us, or the predictable routine. Why? It feels stable, sure, but what's really going on there?
And that right there is the paradox we're digging into. The very thing that makes us feel secure today can, over time, become the source of our deepest dissatisfaction. What feels like a safe harbor is in reality a cage.
Okay, so let's get into the science of it all. And here's the first thing you need to know. This is not a personal failing. It's not a lack of willpower on your part. Your resistance to change is biological. It's basically an old, outdated survival program that's hardwired into your brain.
See, your brain's #1 job isn't to make you happy or fulfilled. Its job is to keep you alive. For our ancestors, wandering into a new part of the forest could literally mean getting eaten. So our brains learned a very, very simple equation. Familiar equals safe, and unknown equals dangerous.
And that ancient wiring leads us to this huge psychological principle called loss aversion. Study after study has shown that the sting of a loss feels about twice as intense as the joy of an equivalent gain. And this little bias has a massive, massive impact on pretty much every decision we make.
Just look at this imbalance. I mean, to a logical mind, gaining $100 and losing $100 should just cancel each other out, right? But our brains don't work that way. The emotional weight of losing that money feels about twice as heavy as the joy of finding it. This biological wiring makes us incredibly resistant to taking any kind of risk, no matter how small the potential loss might be.
So who's on this internal safety team of yours? Well, first up, you've got the amygdala. Think of it as your brain's alarm system. It treats the threat of giving a presentation with the same kind of panic it would for a real physical danger. Then there's dopamine, the reward chemical. Our brains are actually wired to get a hit of dopamine from new and challenging things. When our lives get too predictable, that reward system just goes quiet. And that doesn't lead to peace, it leads to boredom and anxiety.
So we get why we stay put. But what is the actual cost of playing it safe? Well, it turns out the price is way higher than we think, and it's a price that adds up over time. The very first cost is cognitive. We like to think of our comfort zone as a place of rest, but for our brain, it's actually a place of atrophy. Staying there doesn't just keep you where you are, it actively makes your mind weaker.
This is all because of something amazing called neuroplasticity. Your brain is like a muscle. When you challenge it, like by learning a new language or a new skill, you're literally creating and strengthening neural pathways. But if you don't give it new challenges, those pathways weaken. It's a true use it or lose it system.
The second cost is emotional, and this one is a really vicious cycle. The more you avoid discomfort, the bigger and scarier that monster in your mind grows, until even tiny little fears feel absolutely terrifying. Here's how that spiral works. Every single time you dodge a difficult conversation or back away from a new challenge, you're not just avoiding the discomfort in that moment. You're actually training your brain to believe that thing is truly dangerous. Your tolerance for discomfort shrinks, and pretty soon, a small, manageable step feels like trying to climb Mount Everest.
And that leads us to the final and maybe the most painful cost of them all, the slow, creeping accumulation of regret.
Psychological studies have found a staggering statistic. When people look back on their lives, 80% of their biggest regrets are about inaction. Not the mistakes they made, but the chances they didn't take, the words they didn't say. The pain of what if ends up being so much heavier than the fear of trying and failing.
Okay, so that's the problem. But what's the solution? Well, the good news is there's a clear, well-defined path out of the comfort zone. So let's take a look at the map. This is the learning zone model, and you can think of it as a roadmap for your journey out. The key thing to see here is that growth isn't one giant leap. It's a journey through these predictable stages. To get from the safety of the comfort zone, you have to pass through a totally normal period of fear before you can get to learning and finally to growth. Let's trace that path.
The moment you decide to leave the safety of your comfort zone, you step directly into the fear zone. This is where your brain's alarm bells just go nuts.
You'll feel your confidence plummet, you'll worry about what other people think, and you'll invent 1,000 brilliant excuses to turn back. The key is recognizing this stage is both normal and necessary.
But if you can just push through that fear, you enter the learning zone. This is where the magic starts to happen. You start picking up new skills, you start dealing with challenges head-on, you shift from focusing on problems to finding solutions. And as you keep going, you reach the growth zone. And that's where you find your purpose, live your dreams, and start setting new, even bigger goals for yourself.
So how do you actually make that journey? Well, it's not about taking some giant, terrifying leap. It's about rewriting your brain's code with small, consistent, and totally actionable steps. And here are 4 you can start using today.
Here's how you start. First, the 5% rule. Don't try to be 100% different tomorrow. Just aim to be 5% more uncomfortable. Speak up for 15 seconds in a meeting where you'd normally stay quiet. That's it. Second, reframe your fear. Here's a cool science fact. The physical feelings of anxiety and excitement are identical. The story you tell yourself is what makes the difference. So just tell yourself, I'm not nervous, I'm energized. Third, schedule discomfort. Put that difficult task right on your calendar and treat it like a dentist appointment you can't miss. And fourth, and this is so important, reward the courage, not the outcome. Celebrate the fact that you tried, that you asked for the raise, no matter what the answer was. This teaches your brain that the effort itself is the win.
At the end of the day, we have to completely redefine our idea of risk. In a world that's always changing, the most dangerous thing you can possibly do is refuse to change with it. Staying comfortable. That is the biggest gamble of all.
So, that brings us right back to our opening image of those ants. Are you content to keep marching in that circle, following a path that leads nowhere? Or are you ready to break the pattern and chart a brand new course toward growth? The choice is yours.